And
Make sure there's nothing written on the back.
There's none. I checked before I wrote it off.
Let's go back to North Carolina.
Okay.
He went to North Carolina and he was trying to rehab his marriage with his wife.
He said.
Do you know her name at this point?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you okay saying her name?
It's Shanann.
All right. And do you know the children's name?
Yes, it's Bella and Celeste.
Okay.
Cece.
She went by, they called her Cece?
Mhm.
All right. So he went to, were they in North Carolina
They were already
already?
there.
if you want something.
I don't know if my stomach can do that. Yeah, they were already out there. He just flew out there to meet up.
Do you know why they were there?
They're all from there.
Okay, so they were there
They
for...
were visiting her family for the most part until he got there. And then they still were mostly visiting her family.
Okay. And do you know how long they had been there?
A while, like weeks.
All right. And he flew out to join his family there.
Yep.
Did you know specifically where he flew to?
What, airport?
No. What city?
No, not off the top of my head.
Okay.
I'm sure if I thought real hard, maybe I could think about it, but I mean, come up with it, no, I don't know.
All right. So he goes there. You said it was like the last week of July?
I think so. I think it was like one of the last days of July. I'm almost positive. I think it was a weekday.
Okay.
Yeah, he flew out there, and I thought I had like convinced him to like try to make peace with her, and I was like, if you guys work on this, like, I'm out, because what's the point? Like, I'm not trying to be with somebody that's in another relationship, which I know that sounds silly given the whole relationship that we had in the first place, but I really was under the impression that they were separating. I mean, it was like reiterated to me so many times that that's what I thought it was. And it made sense to me too, because like he could pretty much call me whenever he wanted. Like I was the one that would tell him like, hey, when your kids are awake, you need to spend time with your kids. Like do that. And then after they go to bed, like if you want to talk to me, you can talk to me. But it was never like this super, super restricted thing. Like sometimes, like right after work, if I was like still talking to him, I get kind of bummed out, and I tell him just like, oh, it's frustrating sometimes, like having to like wait. But at the same time, I was never like, this is horrible, or it was always like I understood why. But then once his kids were asleep, he never like had any. It was like he could do what he wanted. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Sure.
He was in his basement and she's upstairs and they're not speaking. So it kind of made sense. It wasn't like...
And you guys are
sneaky
just
at night.
texting and...
Or talking or whatever,
Right.
I mean, and it was like I said, it was at certain times, but that time, and originally it wasn't, but it was me that put that time frame on there because I thought he should hang out with his kids.
Those 2 times you were at his house, did you see any evidence of that? Him living in the basement? Did he ever show you that area or anything?
I've seen it, yeah, I went down there and saw his little workout equipment, and there's a bed down there all set up, and the basement was all clean and organized and stuff, so... like a decent bed set up, so it made sense to me. Like, hey, this is what's happening down here. So I saw it.
Even though his family was in North Carolina for multiple weeks, it appeared that he was still living in the basement.
Well, and he told me sometimes he would like go upstairs and sleep if like he was home alone, because I know she'd like go on business trips and stuff. But he's like, I don't like that bed anyway, so he didn't really like sleep up there. I was like, okay. Even when it was just him. So
Okay.
that was the impression that I got. And then we were talking about North Carolina.
Yeah, good.
It began with a quiet, sun-drenched morning in Frederick, Colorado. The kind of morning that hides the darkest truths beneath its warm glow. A wellness check had been called in, routine, almost forgettable. A pregnant mother hadn't shown up for an appointment. Her friends were worried, but no one expected what waited behind that front door. Officers stepped inside a house that felt too still, too silent, as if the air itself knew what had been done within those walls. Not a single sound. Not a single sign of the family who should have filled the rooms with life. Outside, neighbors gathered, their faces tightened with dread. Cameras rolled as a husband, Chris Watts, paced with a strange calm, speaking softly, blinking slowly, wearing the expression of a man who seemed more inconvenienced than terrified. Something felt wrong, deeply wrong, long before anyone could prove it. And then, the truth began to unravel. Slowly at first, then with a speed and brutality that shook the nation. What investigators would uncover, what Chris Watts would eventually confess, would become one of the most haunting family annihilation cases in American true crime history. But buried beneath the headlines and confessions, another thread stirred. A secret relationship, a lover who claimed ignorance, and whispers, persistent, controversial, and fiercely debated, that she may have known more than she ever admitted. Some speculated she wasn't just a hidden figure walking into Chris Watts' life, but a force accelerating the tragedy that followed. As we step into this story, remember to like, subscribe, and share this video so more people find the truth hidden in the dark corners of cases like this. Your support helps bring these stories to light. When the officers opened that door, they had no idea what nightmare they were about to uncover, and neither did the world. Before the world saw their faces on every news broadcast, the Watts family lived behind the facade of a perfect suburban life. Shannon Watts, vibrant and driven, was a woman who poured her entire being into motherhood and marriage. Her social media pages showed smiles, laughter, and hope. 2 little girls with bright bows, a growing baby boy, and a home she worked relentlessly to keep together. She believed in family, in healing what felt broken, in second chances. And she believed her husband still loved her. Chris Watts appeared mild, almost forgettable in the background of Shannon's radiance. Soft-spoken, agreeable, the kind of man who blended into the world without a ripple. But beneath that quiet exterior, something had begun to shift. The pressures of family, finances, and responsibility weighed heavily. And soon, another presence entered his life. Nichol Kessinger worked with Chris at Anadarko Petroleum. Their connection began as simple conversation, a shared workspace, casual exchanges. But it grew quickly, accelerating with an intensity Chris hadn't shown in years. Their relationship, as confirmed by investigators, became secretive, intimate, and consuming. Chris reinvented himself in those hidden moments, shedding his suburban identity for a version of himself he thought he wanted to be. The affair didn't just change him, it rewired him. He lost weight, adopted new habits, whispered promises of a future without obligations. And while Kessinger insisted she believed he was separating from his wife, their relationship formed the emotional backdrop leading toward tragedy. This was the world in which the first cracks appeared. A devoted mother trying to keep her family whole, and a husband slipping further into a life built on deception. The signs didn't appear all at once. They surfaced quietly, like shadows creeping along a wall. At first, Shannon felt distance, subtle, unnerving. Chris grew colder, thinner, more detached. Trips he once looked forward to became chores he could barely endure. The excitement he used to show when seeing his daughters flickered, then faded entirely. Something vital was slipping away, though Shannon couldn't yet name it. During her business trip to Arizona, the silence from Chris became suffocating. Texts went unanswered.
Shannon and their 2 daughters, Bella and Cece, in 2018. I realized this trip's what's missing in our relationship. It's only one-way emotions and feelings, Shannon wrote. The last message she sent was on the night before she was strangled at their home in Colorado. Finally on plane and about to take off, she texted Watts, "Thank God, prayers for safe flight. Love you."
Calls felt forced. She confided in friends that something was terribly wrong. Her instincts, always strong, were sounding the alarm. She sensed another woman. She sensed betrayal. But she never sensed danger, not like this. Meanwhile, as confirmed by investigators, Chris was living a double life with Nichol Kessinger. He searched for vacation spots for 2, new apartments, and even how much life would change when someone doesn't have kids. These digital footprints became an ominous echo of the path he was walking. And though Kessinger maintained she believed he was separating peacefully from Shannon, her presence in his life was unmistakably transformative. Speculation circulated later. Rumors that she pressured him, encouraged a break, maybe even hinted at something more drastic. But there has never been verified evidence proving she planned or helped with the crime. What is known, however, is this: Chris was unraveling, and every choice he made suggested he was preparing to start over. Sean and returned home from Arizona unaware that the storm had already reached its breaking point. The red flags had been there for weeks, yet no one realized how catastrophic the ending would be. In the pre-dawn stillness of August 13, 2018, the Watts home stood silent under a sky untouched by morning light. Inside, something irreversible had already begun. What truly happened in those hours comes from Chris Watts' own shifting confessions, each version darker and more contradictory than the last. But one fact remains. By sunrise, 3 lives were gone. Sean N., 15 weeks pregnant with a baby boy she had already named, never saw the daylight. Her daughters, Bella and Celeste, just 4 and 3 years old, were silenced by the one person meant to protect them. The details are devastating and impossible to comprehend, a brutality that still haunts investigators who stepped into that house later that morning. At first, Chris claimed everything happened in a moment of rage. Then he claimed self-defense. Eventually, under pressure, he admitted to what he had done alone, according to both the official investigation and his own final confession. Yet rumors grew louder. Online forums, independent researchers, and amateur sleuths questioned whether Chris acted entirely on his own. Some believed Nichol Kessinger had a deeper influence, pointing to erased texts, deleted searches, and the intense emotional grip she seemed to hold over him. But these claims remain speculation, unsupported by concrete evidence. Law enforcement never charged her with any involvement. What is certain is this: Chris made a choice. A choice to destroy the family he once held in his arms. A choice to carry their bodies, his wife wrapped in a sheet, his daughters placed inside oil tanks at his work site, into the darkness of a remote Colorado oil field. It was a scene so shocking, so monstrous, that even seasoned investigators struggled to process it. Before we move forward, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us bring more cases out of the dark. When the sun finally rose over Frederick, Colorado, Chris Watts was already performing the role he hoped the world would believe. He texted Shanann's friends, acted confused, and remained eerily calm as neighbors gathered outside the house. He allowed officers to search the home, standing by with an unsettling stillness while the walls around him whispered of what he had done. But every gesture felt rehearsed, every reaction strangely hollow. Inside, investigators noticed the small details that made the truth impossible to outrun. Shanann's purse left behind, her phone still in the house, her medication untouched. A pregnant woman and 2 small children don't vanish without a trace. And certainly not without taking the essentials of their lives with them. Then came the digital trail. Searches Chris thought he had hidden. Deleted messages. The rapid shift in his spending habits. The secret affair with Nichol Kessinger he had desperately tried to bury. Kessinger cooperated with law enforcement immediately, turning over her phone records and internet history. She claimed shock and insisted she had been misled. Even so, speculation erupted. Had she encouraged him to seek freedom at any cost? Investigators found no evidence tying her to the murders, yet questions persisted in the court of public opinion. The breakthrough came when detectives, using body language analysis and strategic questioning, pushed Chris into a corner. His mask cracked, his story crumbled, and in the interrogation room, the truth he had tried to bury began to surface. Soon after, a drone hovering over a desolate oil site captured what investigators feared. A sheet, partially unearthed, exactly where Chris had been that morning. It was over. The lies had drowned in the weight of the evidence. When the case finally reached the courtroom, the world watched with a mixture of horror and disbelief. Chris Watts entered wearing the expression of a man who had already surrendered to the weight of his own actions. There was no dramatic trial, no parade of witnesses, no extended confrontation. Instead, there was a plea deal, swift, heavy, and final. District attorneys laid out the evidence with chilling clarity. The forensic trail, the GPS data, the autopsy reports, the surveillance footage, and the digital records painted a narrative too overwhelming for any defense. The plea agreement spared Chris the death penalty, a decision made with the input of Shanann's family, who wished to avoid the prolonged agony of a full capital trial. They chose certainty over spectacle. Chris pled guilty to 9 counts, including first-degree murder. In a hushed courtroom thick with grief, the judge handed down a sentence that ensured he would never again walk free. 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Additional years stacked for unlawful termination of a pregnancy. More years still for the desecration of the bodies he once called family. No evidence was ever presented in court tying Nichol Kessinger to the murders. She was never charged, and investigators maintained there was no proof of her involvement. Yet her name remained tethered to the shadow of the case, whispered in online theories, debated in comment sections, and questioned by those who believed the official story left gaps. But inside that courtroom, the focus was on one man, Chris Watts, standing alone in the aftermath he created. When the sentences were read and the courtroom emptied, a stillness settled over Frederick, Colorado, a silence heavy with grief, confusion, and a question no one could answer. Why? The Watts murders rippled far beyond the courtroom walls, carving deep scars into families who would never fully heal. Shanann's parents, Frank and Sandy Razusek, became symbols of unimaginable resilience. Their daughter, grandchildren, and unborn grandson had been erased in a single night, leaving a void that could never be filled. Their grief was not loud or vengeful. It was quiet, devastating, and hauntingly human. They spoke of Shanann's kindness, Bella's innocence, Celeste's energy, and the baby boy they would never meet. They spoke of a future stolen, a home forever empty. The community mourned with them. Candlelight vigils filled the streets as neighbors gathered, gripping candles, holding hands, and trying to make sense of a crime that felt too monstrous for their small town. The house on Saratoga Trail stood like a monument to broken trust. Its windows dark, its rooms hollow, its presence a constant reminder of the family that never returned. Online, anger erupted. Sympathy poured out for Sean and the girls, while suspicion and speculation formed storms of their own. Some condemned Chris with a fury rarely seen. Others questioned how no one had noticed the danger rising beneath the surface. And some turned their focus to Nichol Kessinger, convinced she carried a piece of the truth, though no evidence ever placed her at the scene of the crime. The tragedy left everyone searching for answers that didn't exist. In the end, a community was left with memories, heartbreak, and the chilling understanding that evil can hide in the most ordinary places. In the years since the murders, the Watts case has become one of the most dissected tragedies in modern true crime. Every detail, every inconsistency, every digital trace has been pored over by investigators, journalists, and millions of people searching for a reason. But some crimes defy logic. Some acts are born not from a single moment, but from a slow erosion of empathy, an unraveling of humanity that no one notices until it's far too late. Chris Watts sits in a maximum security prison, serving the life sentences that bind him forever to the darkness he created. He has nothing left but time. Time to remember, time to regret, time to confront the silence of a future he chose. Nichol Kessinger vanished from public life, her name permanently marked by a tragedy she was never charged for. Forever caught between public suspicion and official exoneration. And Sean and Bella, Celeste, and baby Nico live on only in memories. Memories held by those who loved them, and by a world that refuses to forget what was stolen from them. This case forces a question that lingers like a shadow. How well do we truly know the people closest to us? What secrets hide behind the smiles, the routines, the quiet evenings at home? And how many tragedies begin long before anyone realizes a line has been crossed? As we close the final chapter of this story, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Your support helps keep these stories alive and ensures the victims are never forgotten. And now, we leave you with one haunting question. Do you believe Chris Watts acted entirely alone? Or is there still more to this story than we've ever been told? Thank you for watching Dark Corner True Crime.